Our program, Travel Experience as a Solo Woman, is designed to expand your experience and provide answers to any worries and concerns you might have about planning travel. Maria Manhart, our presenter, has many years of experience, and she is going to share tips with us and answer your questions. Maria is an AAUW Naperville area branch member and a former program committee member. She's also a public policy activist and a retired lawyer. And now it's my pleasure to turn the program over to Maria.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Manhart. I'm delighted to be here tonight to talk to you about traveling. I've been traveling since I was 20 years old. I've traveled in the United States, in Europe, in South America, in Asia, Africa, the Caribbean. I've done land tours, cruises, escorted tours, resorts, road trips, camping, group tours, and solo trips. As you will see, almost all of the photographs that are used in the slideshow are photos from my own travels. Let's get started. Advantages of traveling solo. You have complete freedom. You choose the destination, the activities, the dates, the details. There is no compromise. Budget control. Complete control over your spending. You can travel on a budget that suits your needs. Personal growth. You navigate situations and decision-making alone, which boosts your confidence and self-reliance. You learn to adapt and be flexible. Cognitive stimulation. New perspectives, lifestyles, culture, music, food, architecture, history, and experiences expose your brain to something new and complex, which grows your brain's capacity. And you test yourself. You step outside your comfort zone. You embrace opportunities to learn. Types of travel. Cruises, resorts, tailor-made personalized itineraries, solo trips, road trips, camping, and escorted group tours. So this is an example of a small cruise ship that I took when I was in Croatia. This is an example of a resort that I stayed at in Zanzibar. This is an example of a tailor-made itinerary. This is an example of solo travel. This is a picture or a photo from a road trip I took in Acadia National Park in Maine. And this is a photo from camping. I am specifically going to discuss the advantages of escorted group tours. They are my preferred type of travel as a single woman. One of the advantages of escorted group tours is everything is planned for you. Travels, meals, accommodations, and all activities. So all you need to do is show up and have a good time and enjoy yourself. You meet new people. I've met a lot of very wonderful people as a single woman traveling on escorted group tours. They always have knowledgeable guides. There was someone available 24/7 to look after your safety. You visit many of the popular tourist sites. And although you're on a schedule, they usually include built-in free time. This is a photo of some of the people that I have met on my escorted group tours. This is the people that I met when I was in Morocco, Madagascar and Africa travel groups, my Myanmar travel group, my China travel group, my Russia travel group. Here are a few photos of guides. This is my Madagascar guide, Naval. Two guides in Africa. The guide on the left is Tim. He was our guide through the entire safari. And the guide on the right side is a local guide in the camp that we were staying at. These are my two China guides. The lecturer, Alex, is on the left. He was with our group the entire time. And the guide, Jerry, is on the right. This is my guide in Peru, Luis Mendoza. And here are some of the popular tourist sites that I have seen on my tours. The Russian Hermitage Museum, the Madagascar baobab trees, Taj Mahal in India, Myanmar, Machu Picchu in Peru, the Sahara Desert in Morocco, Torres del Paine in Chile, the Temple of the Emerald Buddha in Thailand, African Sunset, and the Great Wall in China. When choosing a tour, I would consider the following: the number of days that you wish to travel, the number of guests. The one thing to remember when you're traveling is the more guests that you travel with, the longer time it takes to do absolutely everything. I prefer to travel in groups not exceeding 20 people. I have traveled in groups of 40, and it just takes so much longer to do everything when you're in a larger group. Price, including any single supplement. A single supplement is a premium charge to a solo traveler when they room alone. Activity level. Three kinds usually: easy, moderate, or difficult, or sometimes they do it from 1 to 5. The activities and attractions that you wish to see, the number of meals that are covered. Some tours will cover almost every meal. Some tours will only cover breakfast, and you're responsible for everything else. The transportation type. This is very important. Most of the time you will find that transportation is on a private air-conditioned bus. You might also fly in airplanes. You might also do little river trips on canoes and things like that. On one trip, though, when I didn't pay attention to the transportation type in Peru, we took an overnight public bus, and it was horrible. So I would recommend paying very close attention to how you're going to be transported. And accommodation types, where they are located, the amenities they provide, whether there's air conditioning, whether you have a private bathroom. In some European hotels, there are not private bathrooms. You will be sharing it with other people. Whether they have hot water, whether they provide laundry service, whether they provide Wi-Fi, breakfast, and elevators. In some small hotels in Europe, some of them don't have any elevators at all, or some of them might have very, very small elevators that only 2 people and maybe their luggage can fit on at one particular time. Next, here are some of the meals that we were served when I was on some of my tours. This is a typical meal in China. This is some of the wines that we drank when we were in Croatia. This is we took a cooking class when we were in Madagascar, and this is what we made for our meal in Madagascar. This is some oysters that we had in Croatia when we had a meal at a farmhouse. These are some traditional Croatian treats. Transport types. This is an example of a private large bus. This is an example of a smaller private bus. This is one that we took when we were transported in when I was in Iceland. This is an example of a small plane that we used to fly to different locations on my African safari. One of the things you have to remember on these very, very small planes is you can only bring a certain type of luggage. The weight is very important, and they have to make sure the weight is distributed in all areas of the plane, front, back, and both sides. And if you have any anxiety regarding flying, the planes are very, very small. This is a train that I took when I was in Russia. We took it from St. Petersburg to Moscow. This is a large cruise ship that I was on when I took a Norway cruise. And here are some examples of accommodation types. This is a very large hotel that we stayed in the capital of Madagascar. This is a hotel that we stayed at in Myanmar, Inle Lake. As you notice, the hotel rooms are in the shape of boats. It was on a little canal. Here's an example of a hotel in Morocco. The Sahara Desert is right behind this hotel. Here is an example of a beachfront cottage that I stayed at in Madagascar. Here's a resort we stayed at in Myanmar. Here is a riad that we stayed at in Morocco. And a riad is a house that is built around a central courtyard. It was very charming. And Africa, here is an example of one of the places that I stayed. It's called glamping. It was very luxurious. You can see on the picture on the right, a very comfortable bed. And in the very back, there is a full bathroom, a shower with a toilet and a sink. And they also had, you can zip up the tent at night to prevent bugs and other animals getting in. It was very, very comfortable. Here's an inn that I stayed at in Bar Harbor in Maine, and a B&B that I stayed at in Maine also. This is a homestay that we stayed at in Peru, and a homestay is a stay in the home of a local family. One of the nice things about the escorted tours that I've been on is the authentic cultural connections that we make. We have shared meals with local families. We've visited local villages. We've visited local schools. We've visited artisan studios. We visited women's co-ops. We've discussed controversial topics with experts. We visited local markets, local fishermen. We visited the local nunnery, the local tea plantations, and we attended a whirling dervish performance. These are just some of the examples of the cultural connections that I was able to attend. This is a photo of a meal that we had that was hosted by a local family in Russia. This is a photo of the Maasai tribe in Kenya in Africa. This is a village that we visited in Myanmar, and we also cooked a meal with them while we stayed there. This is a school in Myanmar that we visited. They were singing some songs for us. This is a school we visited in Madagascar. This is a local artisan studio, a pottery studio in Turkey. This is a paper making studio in Madagascar. This is a women's carpet weaving co-op in Turkey. A lot of the women weave carpets in their homes, which allows them to stay home and still take care of the home. This is a weaving co-op in a woman's home in Madagascar. This is an expert speaker that I met, Isabel Toledo, and she spoke about the dictatorship period in Chile. This is a local market in Peru that we shopped at before we made a meal with a local couple. This is a fisherman in Myanmar, and we watched him fish. We were also in a canoe right alongside of him. This is a nunnery in Myanmar. This is a tea plantation. They're picking the tea leaves. And this is a photo of a whirling dervish performance in Turkey. So this is a list of the tour operators and that I have used on the trips that I have taken. I used Brendan in Ireland and Scotland. I used Globus in Spain and Thailand. I used Windjammer on a Caribbean cruise. I used Scan Tours in Iceland. I used Petrobox in Portugal. I used Hurtigruten on a Norway cruise. I used Insight in Turkey and Russia. I used Exodus in northern India. I used G Adventures in Peru. I used World Expeditions in Morocco. I used Mikado for the African safari in Kenya, Tanzania, and Zanzibar. I used Wilderness Travel in Madagascar. I used Lindblad National Geographic in the Galapagos Islands and in China. One of the advantages about using National Geographic is the special consideration that you receive when they are your tour operator. When we were in China, they are very aware of are sensitive about their reputation with the rest of the world. So we received fantastic treatment while we were there. We went to the front of every single line. If anything happened, they helped us immediately. We were able to go into a museum, into a private room, and touch ancient artifacts. So there are some things that only National Geographic can provide. I think that other tour providers cannot. American European Students Union was some of my trips that I took when I was in college to England, Italy, France, Germany, Holland, Austria, Switzerland, and Greece. And overseas adventure travel I used for Myanmar and Chile. Solo trips overseas, I went to Belgium on my own. And the rest of my trips were in the United States, Maine, New Mexico, South Carolina, Oregon, Utah, North Carolina, Wyoming, Virginia, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Washington, D.C. So the one tour operator I am going to discuss today is overseas adventure travel. You can use a lot of these examples or focal points when you're considering any other tour provider. But I've used them a few times and I find them very good. Their experience, they've been operating since 1978. Their customers, 50% of their travelers are solo women who choose to travel on their own or with a sister, mother, or daughter. And they focus on Americans over the age of 50. On single supplements, the definition of that is a premium that is charged to solo travelers when they take a room alone. The amount can range from 10% to 100% of a standard rate. In 2024, OAT offered 24,000 single spaces. 92% of those were free. And on the other 8%, they had the lowest single supplement in the industry, which is one of the reasons I really like to travel with them, is because they don't charge or rarely charge for a single supplement fee. They will also have a roommate matching program, and they will help you find a roommate of the same gender. And if they can't find a match, then the single supplement is free. There's no charge. The type of tours that they offer land and sea tours with leisurely pacing. They offer optional activities. They offer trip extensions, either at the beginning of the trip or at the end of the trip, that you can go to areas that aren't offered in the tour itself. And the trip leader can also offer suggestions and recommendations for things for you to do in your free time. They have a balance of activities and free time, so you can either explore independently or relax. And they offer exclusive women's departures on some of their tours. The benefits of a small group: it's easier to bond with members when the group is smaller. On their ships, they have between 13 to 210 passengers, and their land tours are anywhere between 8 and 16 members or 20 to 25. Small groups can go where large groups can't. You're able to slip into local life without disruption. It's a way to experience a destination, not just visit it. You get the personal experience, personal service from a trip leader. And again, the authentic cultural connections that you are able to make. The sharing meals with families, discussing controversial topics with experts, visiting schools, women's co-ops, farms, artisan studios, and markets. They have discounts. They have a loyalty club. So on your 3rd, 5th, and 10th trip, you get a discount. They have a discount if you pay early. And if you refer a customer, you can earn credits. They will arrange your flights for you if you wish, or you can do that on your own. They will provide you a list of hotels that you will stay at so that you can research them yourself. You always will have a trip leader with you the entire trip. And they also have local leaders in the different areas that you visit who live in the region and are very familiar with it. Someone is always available 24/7, and there's safety in numbers. And they are heavily involved in philanthropy. They donate over 250 million to more than 500 projects in 50 countries. They provide a travel planner, which helps you plan for your trip. Here's an example of one for a trip to Costa Rica. It's over 51 pages. It gives you your day-to-day itinerary. It lets you know what your essential travel documents are, vaccines that you might need, money matters, packing trips. It provides a lot of information for you to help you travel for your trip or plan for your trip. On their website, they offer 101 plus tips for solo women travelers, and it's under the icon Solo Experience. And the value is very good with Oat. They have reasonable low prices. Their prices include all accommodations and daily activities, airport transfers, most meals, most gratuities, except for your leader and your driver. So next are some tips I have to help you in traveling solo. Number 1, preparing for the trip. You need a passport if you're going overseas that is valid for 6 months after you return to the United States. You can renew your passport online. If you're doing international travel, you need to check how many blank pages the country that you are visiting requires, and you can find this information at travel.state.gov. You need to check requirements. You need to check if the country you're traveling to internationally requires a visa, and you can check that at travel.state.gov. You can register or consider registering in the Smart Travelers Enrollment Program at step.state.gov. This is a free service offered by the State Department for U.S. citizens traveling abroad. It enrolls your trip with the nearest U.S. Embassy to receive travel alerts, instructions in natural disasters or unrest, help with legal, medical, or financial issues, and be a point of contact if there's a family emergency. You might consider trying to learn a little bit of the language. I usually use the Mango app. It's free and you can use it through your local library. You can also use the Duolingo app. I would consider providing an itinerary and your tour operator number to a trusted person, and also put a copy in your suitcase in case they lose your luggage. They will be able to find where to send it to if there's a list of all the places that you're going to be traveling to. I would attach a tag with contact information to the handle on the luggage and also put a tracker in the suitcase. I would consider travel insurance, which provides protection if you cancel your trip, if your luggage is lost or stolen, or if you become ill. I also make digital copies of my tickets, my passport, my driver's license, my credit cards, my prescriptions, my suitcase, my insurance card, And I also send that to a trusted friend or relative. I would also suggest getting a medical checkup. I use Passport Help in Naperville. They help you determine if you need special vaccines or medicines. For example, for yellow fever, a vaccine certificate is required for entry to many countries. On the right here, you can keep track of all your vaccines and medicines, tetanus shots, everything in what they call a yellow book. I would also consider buying a guidebook. I recommend Eyewitness. Eyewitness is very helpful. They have photographs of lots of places. They have layouts of museums and other historical sites if you want to visit temples and those type of things. They have layouts of main squares and things like that when there's a lot of historical sites in main squares so that you can easily find your way around. And I like to journal when I travel. So I carry a little pocket-size journal, and I write all about my travels in it. The people that I meet, the food that I try, the places that we visit, everything. You might consider signing up for a trusted traveler program. Global Entry, Nexus, or Sentry. I signed up for Global Entry, which also includes TSA PreCheck within it. The check-in lines are very, very short. And when I'm coming back in through immigration, all you do is scan your passport and you're done. No lines. It takes 5 minutes. I also do a lot of research. I check governmental travel advisories, safety tips, health issues on cdc.gov/travel. I check travel blogs and discussion boards. I read guidebooks. I try to learn a little bit about the history and the culture, about etiquette and electricity needs. You can also try the solotravelerworld.com site for some information too. Packing. I always make a list. I try to minimize so that I'm aiming for one suitcase and one carry-on waterproof backpack. I try to choose items that are quick drying and wrinkle-free, and I also launder my clothes while I'm traveling. In my carry-on, I pack any medications I need, any glasses or contacts, and one change of clothes. When I first started traveling, they lost my luggage in Greece. Mine was the only luggage that didn't come off. So I had to borrow a change of clothes from one of the girls on the trip that I didn't even know. So now I always carry an extra change of clothes in my carry-on. I bring minimal jewelry. I only bring one pair of earrings, and I bring a fake wedding band to ward off suitors, and I never bring anything that I don't want to lose. And I multitask. I bring fabric softener to eliminate odors, duct tape, and can be used for many things. Once when I was in the Amazon, the soles on my boots were starting to come off, and I duct taped them, and that worked fine. I also bring plastic bags for wet items like swimsuits and wash rags or things like that, for toiletries, for dirty laundry. I bring silica gel packs to prevent moisture in a camera case. I also bring a first aid kit. All of the items that you see on this photo fit into that little blue travel kit that I bring with me. And I've used every single one of these items: cotton swabs, gauze sponges, scissors, bunion pads, Band-Aids, the biohazard bag, medical tape, the ACE bandage, Neosporin, tweezers, and antiseptic. Money. I try to bring some foreign currency before I leave if possible. If you bring American bills to exchange, some countries will only accept newer bills dated after a certain date, for instance, 2009, and they have to be in excellent condition, no tears or anything like that. If you're going to pay with a credit card, have one containing a chip because those are harder to scam with no foreign transaction fees. And use the credit card's app so you can receive push notifications for any transactions that your card is used for, so you're instantly notified if it's used. If you're going to use an ATM, only use ATMs in banks. They are more secure. Don't use a standalone machine, and you may receive a better exchange rate. Get rid of currency before you return to the United States. Some currency cannot be converted upon return to the United States. For instance, Madagascar's even bills. I forgot to exchange some bills before I left, and I tried everywhere in Chicago, and I couldn't find any place that would exchange Madagascar bills. A lot of places will exchange other currencies, like the euro is a common currency. They will exchange that, but only the bills. They will not exchange coins. So you're better off just giving them up. A lot of airports have places that you can donate coins to for charities and things. Self-care, use only bottled water, even to just brush your teeth. And don't have drinks that have ice cubes in them. For produce, if it's not cooked or peeled, don't eat it. And for altitude sickness, I suggest getting medicine if you're going to go above 8,000 square feet above sea level. Don't drink alcohol or do heavy exercise for the first 48 hours. When I went to Peru, they told us they gave us certain tea to drink to help with the altitude sickness. They gave us certain candy, hard candy to suck on. It didn't work for me. I had a terrible, terrible headache. It was awful. When I went to Chile a few years after that, I was aware of this and I got medicine for altitude sickness and it worked perfectly. I didn't have any problems at all. So I highly suggest doing that. Safety, don't overshare with strangers. And I bring a whistle to draw attention to myself if I feel threatened. I've never had to use it, but I've always brought it. The safertravel.org provides travel safety tips and info for travelers to over 350 destinations. So you might want to check that out. If there's an emergency, you can call Overseas Citizen Services. If you're in the United States, you can call the 888 number. And if you're overseas, you can call the 202 number. And don't casually discard your paper boarding passes. It contains private information. I bring them home and I shred them. Dining. Tipping is different in every country. A lot of European countries do not tip, not like the United States. And some restaurants charge for appetizers that they deliver to your table when you first sit down. Like, for instance, in the United States, they will bring you bread, and that is included in the price of your meal, not as a separate charge. Well, when I first sat down to my first meal in Portugal, they brought olives and cheese and bread, and I thought that was just like in the United States. But when I got my bill, I found out that those were charged extra. So if they bring something to your table immediately when you sit down, make sure you ask them if it's a separate charge, and if you don't want it, tell them to take it away immediately or you're going to be charged. And some restaurants have a minimum charge. For instance, when we went to a restaurant to see a fado performance in Portugal, there was a minimum charge. So make sure you order enough food or drink to cover up that minimum charge so you get your money's worth. Technology. Check to see if you need an adapter plug or a converter. This is the one that I bring every time I travel. It's got 3 different adapter plugs, and the charging station, you can't see them, but on the sides you can charge more than it has multiple charging stations. So I can recharge the battery from my phone. I can recharge the battery from my camera. I can recharge the battery from my Kindle all at one time. I also bring backup batteries for my camera. When I was on my safari in Africa, we were gone all day long on safari. So there were a couple of times that my battery ran out and I needed my backup battery for my phone. Check with a phone provider about international roaming prices. Um, uh, and you can share certain photos and videos instantly. For instance, I have the iPhone and you can share photos and videos on using AirDrop, which is really nice. That you can do it instantly while you have everybody there. You can exchange photos that you might have missed or videos that you might have missed, and you don't have to wait till you get back to the USA and try to catch up with everybody you want to trip with. The top travel apps that I use, Google Translate, is very nice because you can use that for written words, for spoken words, you can use it for menus. It has a camera on it that you can hold over the menu and it will translate all the menu items. You can use the spoken words. You can say something in English and it will translate that back to somebody in their language, but you need to be near Wi-Fi to be able to do that. Or you can just type it in and it will translate it into the language that you want to get a message to somebody. I needed to use this. I've used this several times when I was trying to find bathrooms or trying to find certain products that I needed, that you can't pantomime, that you need to be able to actually have somebody translate for you. I have a temperature converter because I can't convert Celsius in my head. I'm just not able to do that. I have a currency converter, so when I go shopping, I know how much I'm spending in US dollars. And of course, I have Google Maps that you can use when you're walking around on your own. Photography. I bring a waterproof, sandproof bag for cameras. When I took my trip in Galapagos, they warned us to bring a waterproof bag for our cameras because there would be wet landings, which is you're in a little boat and it is brought up onto the sand and the waves can be very they can be very heavy and trip you over. And that actually happened to me. The waves came in, I slipped and fell. Luckily, my camera was in a waterproof bag and I didn't have any problems with it. Also, if you're going to be in the desert, the sand can wreak havoc too with cameras. So it's a good idea to have a waterproof bag for the deserts too. And you should be aware of local customs. A lot of places, it's just nice to ask someone's permission if you're going to take a photo of a person. And some places do not allow you to take photographs of certain things. For instance, when we were in China, there were certain buildings we could not take photographs of. So be very careful when you're taking photographs, and in some museums, they don't allow you to take photographs. Some places may expect you to provide a tip if you take a picture of a person. And it's always nice to show the subject you took a picture of their picture, especially children. They love to see pictures of themselves. Manners. So personal space is different in every country. In Peru, the distance between people is very short. And in the United States, we have about a 3-foot distance that makes us comfortable. But in Peru, it was very, very short. People come very close to you. And in Japan, they have very short distances. They're very crowded. And so that's just something you need to be aware of. In clothing, you should respect local customs, especially religious sites. You might be required to cover your knees, your shoulders, or your hair. And in some places, you're required to move your shoes. Be aware of differences in local laws. Littering in Japan, or chewing gum in Singapore, or jaywalking in Italy can be very serious offenses in these countries, and it can cause a fine or jail time. Be aware of differences in communication styles. Eye contact. In Asian countries, direct eye contact is considered disrespectful. In the Middle East and India, direct eye contact between different genders is considered inappropriate. For body language, bowing in Asian countries is considered respectful. And in facial expressions in some countries, displaying angry faces, especially in Asian countries, offends them. And punctuality is different in every country. Switzerland is very strict. It is considered very disrespectful to be even a few minutes late. And in the Caribbean, everybody's late, sometimes between 30 minutes and an hour. So they're very flexible. And here we are at the end. I think the world is amazing, and I hope everyone has the opportunity to see it and experience it. I've never had a bad trip, even if, unexpected things happen. I've had lost luggage and things like that, but I've loved every single trip that I've ever been on. And I would highly recommend seeing the world, and don't let just being a single travel or solo traveler stop you from seeing the places that you wish to see. And if you have any questions that you want to ask me after the program is over, you can contact me at my email address, which is right here. It's 3 of my nicknames, Lefty Tyler Riri at yahoo.com. So that's it. I hope everyone enjoyed the program. Okay.
Well, I put a question in there. Have you ever had a challenge during travel that you weren't expecting and maybe you haven't told us about? How did you handle it?
Here, let me go to, okay, there we go. Okay, so I would say yes to that. This happened when I was in New Mexico by myself. And I was driving by myself to the Chaco Cultural National Historical Park. It was 20 miles on a dirt road, and there was nobody for miles. No food, no gas, no place to get repairs, nothing. They tell you in the guidebook that if you're going to drive there, make sure you don't go when the roads are muddy or it has rained the night before. Now, I had stayed in a different city that hadn't had any rain the night before, so I thought it would have been okay. But when I got there, the roads were a little muddy, but I thought, oh, I'm sure I'll be okay. I'll just go slow. But I started to go and I slid into a ditch. And I tried to back out of it, and I was stuck. And so I thought, what the heck am I going to do? I'm in the middle of nowhere. But the funny thing is, I had viewed a movie called Touching the Void about a week before I went on this trip. And I don't know if any of you have seen that movie. It's a documentary, and 2 guys are climbing a mountain in Peru. And one of them breaks a leg when they are descending, and they continue, but all of a sudden a terrible storm starts. And one of them is lowering the injured person over a drop-off, and the injured person is suspended in midair, and he can't see him or hear him. And they're stuck there for over an hour, and it's getting really terrible. And he realizes that if he doesn't do something, they're both going to die because they're going to get hypothermia. It's a terrible. So he cuts the rope, and the injured person falls into this large crevice, and it's like falling and falling and falling. And so his leg is broken, and he's looking around, and he can't go up. So the only thing that he can do is to lower himself into the abyss, and he finds an exit at the mountain base. And he spends days crawling across the glacier to reach it to the base camp. So I thought of that movie because when I was trying to get out of the ditch, I went the way I thought it looked like it would get me out of the ditch, but it wasn't working. So I thought of this movie, and I thought, well, I can't keep going back this way. I might as well try the other way, even though it looks to me like I'm going to go farther into the ditch if I do this. And it worked. I got out of the ditch. So that was one thing that happened to me that could have been, I could have walked for miles, and I'm sure I would have found somebody eventually, but I think it was sort of fate that I watched that movie before I went on the trip, and I remembered it, and it helped me getting out of a bad situation.
I'm sure we can all be very resourceful when needed.
Okay.
So we have another tip in the chat. Starting January 1st, additional fees are now being charged to travel in the UK and also in European countries. Carolyn Weber shares this. Saw it on TV last night, but didn't catch the amounts. So something to watch for.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah, I think it's, yeah, she's right. The European countries, they're charging. It's not, I don't think it's very much, but it is a fee. There are a lot of places that charge departure fees in the airport, or arrival fees when you reach the airport too. Usually you can find those things out in when you do research on on a place that you intend to visit.
Right. And one thing I found, you mentioned checking whether a visa is required. You need to make sure you're checking for US citizens because they will have sometimes different lines for, everybody traveling, non-citizens, but then they might have a special line for US and Australia because if they are requiring a visa, you might be going through a different check-in process. I did that once and got in the wrong line. And, I just thought, I'm a foreigner, this is the line. But I wasted time because I had to go to the special line for US because we had a visa to be checked. So preparation is definitely worth the effort.
Mhm. So there's a new question here. Where did you travel in the US that you find most memorable? I'd probably have to say Oregon's really beautiful. They have a lot of waterfalls in Oregon. They have a like a road that you can drive along that has waterfalls all along the road. And some of them are just right off the road, especially one of the most famous ones, Multnomah, which is a beautiful waterfall in Oregon. And then they also have some that are like you can park your car and hike maybe a mile to go see the waterfalls. But they have about 12 of them along this trail, along this roadway, that you can park, drive and park and go see, or drive and park and go hike. I also think Utah has a lot of national parks that are incredibly beautiful, and I think they're really well kept secrets. Um, so there's a lot of I did a lot of hiking when I was younger, and so I think Oregon and Utah are probably my two favorites. Virginia for the history. They have all the homes there, Monticello and Jackson's house, and I love history and architecture too, and so you know I I started doing some of my travels in the United States, and then I decided to start going overseas because it's easy to travel in the United States when you're older. There's, a lot of things that provide for handicaps and, stairs and things like that. And you know the language, it's easy to drive, you understand everything. And I think it's better to travel overseas when you're younger. You have a little bit more energy. Um, the flights don't kill you. The the flying 17 hours just really kills you the older you get. So I started with the United States traveling, and then I decided I'm going to start traveling overseas now because I can always come back to the United States when I get older, and it'll be easier to travel when I get older. Um, uh, but not, it might be hard for me to fly, 17 hours when I'm 85, but I can still travel in the United States when I'm 85. So,
I love your photographs, and I I've been to your house and I've seen your photographs, the one things that are behind you, and I just wanted to make people aware that those photos you showed were your photos, not by a professional photographer, because your photographs are spectacular.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Lynn. I love photography. That's one of my hobbies. And you can kind of see there's photos behind me. I always try to pick at least one photo of a place that I've been to enlarge and put up in my home to remind me of where I've been. So that's one of my favorite things to do. Um, and I also I've been given a few programs on places that I've been um, to AAUW. Um, I can talk about travel all day long. I just love travel and I love to hear other people's experiences too. I always ask people when I meet new people on trips, where was your favorite trip, to get new ideas about some place I might not have considered, or what they liked and enjoyed, and maybe I'd like to go see too. One of like Madagascar, somebody had mentioned that to me, and I hadn't heard that one before, and was one of my favorite trips of all time. I loved that place. So I always ask that question when I meet new people.
I just put that question in and
Oh,
just answered it.
my favorite overseas location was probably, I don't say location, but my safari. It was the only time I took a luxury trip because I just was not going to sleep. I don't like to camp. I want a comfortable bed and a bathroom and a shower. And so I took my one and only luxury trip in Kenya and Tanzania, and it was absolutely fantastic. I loved it. We saw every animal you could possibly imagine. Um, our guide was fantastic. He was one of the guides that takes National Geographic around when they come to Africa trying to get, photos of animals and things like that. And he gave me a lot of tips for photography and things like that. And he also it was a guide that could do walking tours to find animals. I mean, seeing animals in the wild is simply amazing. And we saw everything you could possibly imagine. We came upon a den of lions. There was probably 12 of them. They were like, 25 feet away from us. And they're just lounging around this, water hole. And it was just amazing. But I love Madagascar too. That was another one of my favorite trips because the animals, again, were just so unusual. The lemurs and the chameleons. There's just a lot of species you don't see other places. And it was really amazing there. And it's sort of like an undiscovered place too. It's pure, and it's not overrun with tourists. So that's another thing that I liked about it. Uh, I haven't been to Vietnam, Laos, or Cambodia yet. It's definitely that those are on my bucket list too. There's so many places to go see. There, that I'm just trying to get around to all of them. Hmm. Hmm.
And I think you're going to one of my favorites, New Zealand. Isn't that on your list?
That's definitely on my list. I'm going to Costa Rica in February, but New Zealand is definitely on my bucket list.
Maria, excuse me. I was in Ethiopia for 5 years as a mission worker in Addis Ababa, and many times friends would come and we'd go out more to the more remote areas and look for particular birds. I had this terrific bird guide, but it was so amazing to me because I'd get back home. I had a bird feeder right outside my kitchen window, and I mean, one day I was standing in the backyard and, the exact same bird that we had, hiked many miles up some mountains to find, there it was. It was so amazing. And the birds with the really long tails, I mean, just the bee eaters. Oh, they're so beautiful.
I'm a bird watcher too, actually, which is one of the things I really liked about Madagascar and also Africa, because our guide was, I told him I was a bird watcher and he was too. So he was great at helping us find birds. And in Madagascar too, we found a lot of birds, and I just love birds, and they're also beautiful and amazing. The bee eaters, obviously, in Africa are just beautiful. In my favorite bird though in Africa was the lilac breasted roller. Um, they have like 6 different colors: turquoise and lilac and yellow and brown. I mean, like there are 8 different colors, and I just love that bird. And we got so many pictures of it. And the bee eater too, and I mean, there's just so many. I just loved it. And it really helps to have a guide who knows birds and is into birding, because they can find them so well for you. So I'm a big fan of that too. Oh, I got a question here about, I've never been on a Rhodes Scholar trip. So I don't have any opinions to offer regarding Rhodes Scholar. It's one of the few tour companies I haven't ever used. Unfortunately, I can't help you with that one. But I've used quite a few different ones. One that I would not suggest taking is G Adventures. That was the Peru trip that I took, and they tend to be less expensive. That was the overnight bus trip that I really didn't like. And they also tend to have younger people. I remember there was a group of us that were older and a group that was young, and they would get drunk every night, and then they'd be sick on the bus the next morning. And that was really unpleasant. So that's one tour group that I would not recommend using if now. I wouldn't use them
Okay.
again.
You will see lots of birds in Costa Rica.
Hmm?
You're going to Costa Rica,
Oh,
Marie?
yes.
Lots of beautiful birds in Costa Rica. And I don't know if some of the AUW members remember going on a trip to China with AUW back in, I think it was 2010 or 2011. I don't know if anybody was on. Elaine, were you on that trip? No?
No.
It was a great trip because we got to see a lot of AUW is not doing those kind of trips anymore.
Mhm.
But I don't remember what travel agency we used for that, but we got to see a lot of things that we wouldn't necessarily have been able to see.
Mhm.
I know
Yeah.
another trip that AUW sponsored was, I think, to Cuba when they first
wow.
opened
Oh.
it up to
That was
educational.
only like 1 year. It's
Right.
already closed.
Very short window.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I put in the chat, we are planning to share the slides as well as the recording. So you'll have all of those tips and references.
Okay.
Another place I would say put on your bucket list is Australia and the Great Barrier Reef.
Mhm.
If you can stand to fly to Los Angeles and then to Australia, it's about 23 hours.
Let's see. I have a question. Why did I pick February for Costa Rica? It's supposed to be one of the shortest rainfall months. And temperature-wise, it's also one of the best. I'm big on research. I do a ton of research before I choose a place. I get guidebooks from the library, usually 3. And I research attractions, time of year. I research, rainfall. I research, temperatures. I'm a former attorney, so I'm big on research because I want to go everywhere. I'm usually only going to go places once, and I usually pick a country. I don't usually like city hop to different countries. I pick a country and I go to as many places in that country as I can to get kind of the feel for the whole country. And I'm probably not going to go back because I did I decided when I took my first trip, I want to go everywhere. So I do a lot of research, and based on what I want to see, that's how I choose the tour company that I'm going to use for the trip. So I have a whole grid that I have of a list of all the tour companies that, like, I'm researching Bhutan right now because I'm thinking about going there in October. So I've done my list of attractions that I want to see, and now I've got a list of the tour companies that offer a trip to Bhutan, and I go down and I see how many, how many are of the companies, what are they going to? What does it cost? Is there a single supplement? Everything I mentioned to you guys, the number of guests, the transportation types, all that stuff. So, because I've never had a bad trip, even though things have happened. I've never had a bad trip. I just think it's a lot of its attitude. Things are going to happen. You just need to be able to adapt to them, and they always make for good stories. So,
All right, well,
ah,
I see we have an opinion on Rhodes Scholar,
and
but
somebody
they do
went
not
to.
have home visits or meeting local people.
I really enjoy that part of my trips, meeting the local people, and the variety of things that you can, the schools. I always love going to the schools, and meeting the local villagers, and we met and cooking meals with them. I find that really enjoyable. I really feel it gives you a great flavor for the people that live there. There was that one thing I said, it you experience a destination, not just see it. You're not just going to a site and seeing things. You actually experience the people there, with the cultural connections, which is what I really like.
Hello? I
Hello?
just wanted to say that research is so important. If I had been better at research, I would have had my cloth in my crossbody in Japan, because none of the bathrooms have any toilet paper. They have cleaning wipes for the toilets, but not for you, because they're afraid you might litter. Another thing in Europe, I remember being in Freiburg, and I had the coins to get into the bathroom, no problem. I had the coins to give to the little um, person who is allowing me to get in, but I didn't have the coins for the toilet paper dispenser that was inside the stall. But always carry Kleenex with you everywhere you go, and you won't have any problem doing that. I also, I'm not sure that I saw, I went on a tour with my parents, the Vienna, the Great Rivers of Europe with Grand Circle. This is 20 years ago. I was by far the youngest person on that boat at 55. Everyone was 75, 85, but they were the liveliest bunch of people. And occasionally there would be a time when the tour operators, in fact, invited me to come to dinner with them. They must have felt sorry for me or something. Grand Circle and OAT, I think, are wonderful tour operators.
Mhm.
And very accommodating, very helpful, and they have really good guides. Be careful if you're going on a tour, and maybe you have some ideas. If you go on a tour that's being promoted, for example, I went on a tour to Israel, created by the pastor of a church and a Rotarian and all of that. And I said I wouldn't go on a tour again, although Israel, I can't rent a car and just drive around. That wouldn't have worked out real well. But I was with a group that seemed to go to bed at 7 o'clock every night. So I would end up, like, I went on the hotel employee bus to go take people back to their homes at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, just so that I would get a flavor of the real people.
Mhm.
Do you have any hints as to how I could have avoided that, found a different tour group?
Um, I look at what the escorted group tours, what activities they take you to, and you look at because they will give you detailed itineraries. So you can see, are we doing something at night? And if not, a lot of times they'll leave you free to do something you want at night. So like a lot of times you get to know people on the tour and you'd say, oh, let's go out to dinner. If you have a night where you're not getting provided dinner, we'd all get together and go out to dinner. Like when we went to Portugal to see the Fado performance, we did that on our own. But I had researched it in my guidebook and I had picked the place that was supposed to be the best place to hear it. So I told the other people in the group about it and they thought it sounded great. So we had dinner together that night and then we went to the Fado performance and it was amazing. So I think it comes from research, but usually if you have a good tour leader, they can make suggestions because they usually live in the areas, and they can tell you if you want to go to a jazz bar, if you want to go to a blues bar, or if you want, like one time we went to a play. It was when we went on the Ireland tour, we went to a play, an Irish play. A couple times we went to musicals. It wasn't part of the performance, but we wanted to do it, so they suggested it. And then other times, like in Scotland, I think there was a performance and a big, huge meal and a performance that was part of it. So a lot of the itineraries will tell you what's planned, and you can figure out if, they're leaving the nighttime up to you after the dinner's over. You can make you can ask for suggestions and they can give you ideas too. Because I like to do some stuff on my own. And I like some free time to myself. I like to shop too. I I like to buy some jewelry and I like to try to find some art and a few other things that I collect or something to remind me of a place. And some people hate that, and I don't want to hear them complain about it. So I usually try to do that on my own. Um, but I would research. Because the good places will provide you with the itinerary and you can tell, and a lot of them will say free time on your own. And all the tour leaders that I've ever talked to can give you ideas about where to go and what to do if you want to do something on your own during the free time. So that's why when I bring a guidebook with me, so if I have free time, I have things that I will that I will tab that I want to do if there's free time that I keep keep track of. And I've spent free time doing stuff on my own every once in a while. Go visit something on my own. Sometimes I'll go to a resort at the end of the tour, like I'll take one of the extensions and it'll just be so I can, just relax the last couple of days and not run around and doing my own, you're running around doing all these things, and it's just nice to relax the last couple of days, especially when I was working and I had to go back to work. I didn't want to be like totally exhausted when I got back home.
Thanks.
We have another question about ratings of hiking or walking difficulty. Have you found them to be accurate or?
It depends. Like Madagascar, when I went there, I think they had rated the trip moderate, and to a certain extent it was. I have a problem with one of my knees though, it's only if we're doing steps. I can walk up steep and walk down steep, but if it's steps, that tends to bother one of my knees. But what they did was they had 3 or 4 guides. And so if there was a group that had, knee problems, they would take that group on a different tour and take the others on the one that might have been more difficult. But there's so much to see. You didn't miss, I mean, it's just like being in Africa on safari. There are so many animals. You didn't miss anything. We saw birds and tons of other animals too. But just if you're having problems, don't do anything more than moderate. And sometimes the moderate, like sometimes they'll grade it 1 to 5. Don't do anything more than 3. 3 can even be a little bit difficult sometimes. But it also depends. A lot of times they'll tell you the pace too. They'll tell you the pace and they'll tell you there's some difficulty. Like I'm looking at Bhutan and there's the Tiger's Nest there. That's basically a 3 to 5 hour climb, and it's very difficult. One of the tours I was looking at said, oh, you can ride something most of the way up, and none of the others mentioned that. So I put a star by that trip to make sure I check that one out more, more in depth when I'm looking at all the other ones. But a lot of times if there's something difficult, they will tell you that it's difficult. So, and it's usually, they say easy, moderate, difficult, or they do 1 to 5, rate it. Don't do anything more than moderate.
I would caution people, if you go to New Zealand, they are very into hiking, and they have volcanic hikes that are very steep and then down into the rainforest. And since they're used to it, I would take their ratings with a grain of salt or a pound of salt.
Also, when you're in the country, I remember with my parents, we were in Ireland and Wales and Great Britain, and every local we asked would say, oh, it's just 5 minutes down the road or down this path. Half an hour later, Mom was at the restaurant and I was walking back to get the car so I could come and pick her up. Because their 5 minutes is never 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Like Vegas, everything that's closer than it actually is. Everything's so big, it looks like it's just a couple of blocks away when it's actually 3 miles. Yes.
Well, we have another positive comment about going to South Korea and Japan.
Japan's on my list too. I haven't been there yet.
Yeah, it is a very interesting and beautiful place.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic itinerary, trip leaders, and food. It was level 3, and we were able to keep up, and we were the oldest at 83.
Good for you.
That's Ruth Bradburn. Thanks for that. Well, we have run out of time, but
Okay.
as Maria said, she's happy to talk travel. Feel free to sign off. We don't want to keep you longer than we planned, but thank you, Maria, for sharing all of your experience and encouraging everyone to explore and enjoy traveling.
Mm-hmm. I'll sign off with this. On a lot of the tours that I've taken, there's a ton of women that are traveling solo. I mean, the older I get, actually, the more women there are than men traveling solo. A lot of them, they have husbands, they don't want to travel. And some of them come with a friend or two. I've always traveled by myself because I get my own room. I can do what I want, spend what I want, eat what I want, whatever. And so that's the way I like it. But I don't want women to feel, you'll meet people, you'll meet really interesting people, and you'll have freedom to do what you want. There's so much to see. Don't prevent yourself from following your dream to travel, because you're single or because you have to do it solo. You can still have a great time.
I had a friend who's unfortunately since passed away who would tell me he and his wife traveled a lot. And when I would ask him about traveling, he'd say, you're in good health, do it now. So when he was still alive, whenever I traveled, I would email him and I would say, I'm following your sage advice and I'm doing it now.
Yeah.
Even if you're not in great health, my dad would have his pacemaker checked by telephone when we were in Salzburg. I think we were in Salzburg. So you can always use all of the new technology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it was lovely talking to all of you. Goodbye, and I hope you guys have great trips.
Thank you. Happy
Thank
travels.
you.
You too.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.